Hello and welcome back to the Undercut podcast. It's time to preview the first sprint weekend of the year at the Chinese Grand Prix. I'm your host, Jesse Billington, and joining me once again is none other than Mr. Thiemo Albus Daly. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. Busy week so far. Slightly less busy weekend coming up, mercifully, thanks to China only having the one sport series and not clashing with IndyCar as Australia somehow managed to do. So things are looking good. How about yourself?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Looking forward to the weekend also. Been another busy day for me. Not been in the office, which is a rare change for a Wednesday, but still busy battling the ongoing geopolitical situation, which seems devoid of, or seems very much determined to have me devoid of any money as I bid to try and make a mortgage out of something. But anyway, that's very much by the by. We are importantly, though, joined by a friend of the podcast, resident Haas expert, Mr. Henry Wallace, aka the Haas Chap. Welcome back to the podcast, and how are you?
I am struggling with severe sleep deprivation. Um, we have got endless amount of renovations at home, landscaping, plastering, internal walls being put in, and work on top of it. But apart from that, I'm very happy that Formula One is back and super stoked to see what this 2026 season is going to bring us.
Yeah, a lot of promise already for many people, and a lot of dread for others off the back of the first race weekend of the year in Melbourne, Australia. But as I said, we're heading north but staying far east to get to Shanghai and China for the second round of the season. As Timo has already alluded to, we'll be joined by just the one feeder series, and it's going to be Formula One Academy, which makes its return for the 2026 season, with second time out for the series in Shanghai. 10 rookies this year, one returning wildcard driver, and six returning full-time drivers. It's an interesting lineup, Timo.
Yeah, I'm most looking forward to the rookies, to be perfectly honest, because I think this is the first year since we've had F1 Academy permanently on the calendar that I didn't know most of them before they were announced, and I had to go looking. We were talking about, as we always do with F1 Academy, how when it started, a lot of it felt like established drivers were in that series, and it was nice that they still had somewhere to go and that they could use it as a springboard. But we wanted it to be like it was envisioned to be, where it's bringing you people you don't know. Hopefully, you will then know for a long time afterwards because they get the opportunity to showcase themselves, get some good publicity, all that good stuff. And 10 rookies, 10 brand new faces, no expectations whatsoever. And if half of them are even as good as the rookies we had last year. And then you combine that with the fact that the returning drivers are last year's rookies for the main part. That could be quite fun to watch in terms of race performances. You remember, obviously, last year we had Ina Gaidman leading most of the sprint race, and then the car cogged out on her. Alicia Palmowski then got the win, and it's all rookies. And then Dorian came in for the second race and had a nice battle with Maya. So if we can have this nice rookie battle going on alongside the experienced drivers, then I'm looking forward to it. And I think as Henry's here, we don't really need to speculate on who he'll be supporting as Haas have their own driver in F1 Academy this year.
No, absolutely not. Kaylee Countryman is definitely going to be the person that I'm going to be fully backing. We only had um, um, this is our third driver now because of course we had Chloe Chambers last year, and then it was Courtney
Crone?
Courtney Crone was last year and Chambers
Crone.
was
Thank
before,
you.
I believe,
I
wasn't it?
couldn't quite remember if it was Crane or Crone, but Courtney Crone last year. Um, a very apt name for somebody from stateside, I think, countryman.
Hmm.
Um, and hopefully she can bring us another podium, just like Chloe Chambers brought Haas its first ever podium. I think it's quite a
First
nice
first
little.
podium, first win as well. On
Well,
top of
yeah,
that, she got all
I think
three steps of the podium over the course of that year.
absolutely,
You were having a
absolutely.
baller of a time.
I think it's a really cool little accolade. I mean, probably not great for the main team, but to say that the first win and the first podium for Haas was indeed in F1 Academy, I think that's a very positive thing. Um,
I think this is your year, though, Henry, on the Formula One podium front. If you're starting as strong as you were in Australia, and that's the way we're moving forward, then I'm jumping on that bandwagon with you, and let's go for it. Let's go get a Haas podium this year. I don't care with which driver, and I don't just mean in F1 Academy. I mean in the main, in the main series.
No, definitely. This is there's something that really felt, and I know we don't really need to, we shouldn't really look too much into testing, and that's a chapter that's now been and gone. But I think from all of the memories and all of the things that we've so far seen from Haas this year, where there has been very strong in testing, there has been excellent reliability. Um, they have just been able to put lap after lap after lap after lap, and everything seems to be going in the direction that they intended it to go and even further. And to see what Ollie did last weekend, and what Esteban so very nearly got um, in Australia, I think is a very clear indicator that this is possibly going to be, I'm going to say it now, and I'm probably jinxing it, but Haas's strongest ever year,
Ooh, ooh,
or
bold,
topping
bold.
2018. I
It's a
think. I think we're going to be 100 plus points this year.
that's a
And
bold
you're
one.
already part of the way there.
Well, there we go. Off the mark. What do you want?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, I think, especially because we've still got a lot of development for teams to pull out as well. So it's going to be a lot to unpack as the season goes by. But for Formula One Academy, we've got an interesting driver lineup. We've still got, as Team and I was saying in the pre-record, Prema to announce their third driver. So far, they have given us just I should be able to check. Where is it on my list? Matilda Potts and Peyton Westcott. Um, Westcott was a wildcard driver last year. I think
Both
so
were
was
wildcard
Potts.
drivers
Yeah.
last year. I think Westcott was in Vegas at, I cannot remember, I think possibly Canada. I don't think she had an awful lot of luck on that occasion. I think that was the Gatorade car that just kept being in the wrong place at the wrong time and then being driven into. So she'll be hoping for just to make it to the end of the race if that's indeed the driver I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so a jumbled lineup and driver one, funnily enough, listed on the Prema website, on the sort of the Formula One Academy website, driver one for Prema, TBA. So watch this space. Maybe in the time it takes me to edit and upload this using Bedfordshire Wi-Fi, they might have revealed it. They might not.
That is usually how this works.
They might do like a really big unveiling actually like ahead of the practice session as well. So
Would you like an outlandish theory that is definitely not going to be the case, but would be fun clickbait to write?
go on, why not?
Who's just stepped away from her Sky Sports F1 commitments and is looking to pursue other avenues?
If you say Danica Patrick, I'll throw something at you through this Teams call.
Mercifully, I didn't say that, but you did, so we
She's
can
too
bridge
old, I
that
think.
gap.
She's too old is the absolute saving grace for this. But we did mention it at the tail end of the last episode that it's funny that a lot of F1 Academy drivers from the previous season are just sort of failing up to levels beyond where previous champions have reached, and a lot of them haven't actually reached anything incredible at all. If anything, Dorian Pan has taken a step backwards in her racing career. Obviously, previously she's run in endurance racing and she's run some pretty high class events, and has now gone back to like GT or LMP2 or
It's
something.
LMP2 Pro-Am category, I think, is the official designation for this year. Um, but that's a whole conversation for another time because we could. I think it's one of those things where we've all got our own 2 cents to put into it, and it's clearly not in its final form yet. But it would be helping itself if it did itself a few favors and ironed out these sorts of kinks sooner rather than later.
Because ultimately, I criticize it from the sense of a journalist. I expect more from it as a series because I want to see these drivers progress somewhere.
Hmm.
But if you're simply looking to be a detractor, this is a very big open goal for it as a series to have simply proven, if anything, its detractors right, that women can't get into Formula 3 and Formula 2 on sort of the current modern playing field. Again, it's playing devil's advocate to say that, but ultimately it hasn't yet proven that. And
This is a conversation that we had on a previous edition of this podcast, wasn't it? When we had good old Fraser Ford along, where the the kind of conclusion that we all came to is that yes, it's really good to have something like F1 Academy in place, but if it doesn't have that progression to the further formulas, then what is it doing really? okay, you could theoretically put somebody in as almost like a token reserve driver, but again, without any sort of genuine intent on putting somebody in a seat in Formula Three, or even like getting them to skip Formula Three and go straight into Formula Two. Where is where is it? We need the evidence for the
Well, I
fact
think
that this is a
this is the thing, right? If it feels like in some regards, this is the last thing I'm saying is that it doesn't have a clearly defined goal. It has a clearly defined goal of saying a little bit like More Than Equal. Let's have the first female F1 world champion. Great. More Than Equal are a great partner and a great organization to help support that development, but they're not solely in charge of making that happen. Whereas F1 Academy, it feels like because they are on the same weekend as F1, they've created this narrative themselves of we're going to help you get there in a bigger way. And because of all the associations with teams now and all that sort of thing, it feels like if that's not your goal, that's fine. But then restate what your actual goal is. Because if it's, as I see it being for the rookies this year, of come in, introduce yourself, get seat time that we know is difficult to get. You don't have to pay for it. We've got all that covered. And here's some great media training. Here's this, here's that. If that's your goal, perfect. We love that. And if that's all that is, that's also just fine. We didn't have anything like that before. We need it now. Keep doing that, but then don't promise something that you either can't deliver or are struggling to figure out how to do it. You know, you think honesty is the best policy with these sorts of things. Don't try and just keep selling us something that maybe isn't exactly what you'd like it to be, and don't say, well, it's going to be at some point. Like, just give us the plan, be honest with us, because it's going to take you a lot further, I think, in the long run. And I don't know what the reason for all that is. Maybe it's too many balls being juggled at the same time, but I think just clearer messaging would go a long way on us not criticizing it for the wrong thing then necessarily, or making sure we're criticizing it fairly, if so that we know what to do, the good and the bad side of it.
Mm.
yeah.
Because ultimately, I want to give it fair criticism and sort of hold it to the same account that we hold Formula 3 and Formula 2 to. And I think the other half of the issue is it's held on the same weekends as Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1. It's badged as the Formula 1 Academy. It sells itself off the idea of there is this progression in the same way that Formula 3 and Formula 2, they have like the Road 2 sort of complementary series similar to Drive to Survive that showcase these drivers progressing and working at making their careers take the next step. When you call something the Academy of, you expect someone to step up. We look at the Red Bull Driver Academy, look at the Alpine Driver Academy. There is that expectation they step up to those teams. Calling yourself the Formula One Academy very much lines you up for the idea of people, regardless of how well read they are on the subject, going, oh, so the logical progression is eventually you'll take at least one step up the hierarchy of ladder to Formula One. And so far it's falling short of its own name. And I think that's the tricky part. And it yeah, it becomes easy to detract if you want to take it entirely at its face value. But anyway, topic for a completely different podcast. We might as well ramble on about it because we've got plenty of time to do so because it's been a week where there's been very little news. The Williams is fat. It's 28 kilos overweight compared to the rest of the field, but we sort of already knew that. There's rumors that Mercedes is refusing to share engine data with its customers to avoid being beaten by a customer team again. But again, I haven't been able to actually track down anything that solidly proves this. Just a lot of griping from sort of McLaren fans on Twitter, which is never anything to go by. And Franco Colapinto remains completely unmedia trained. Anyone who's been watching his Instagram stories, his social media feed for the past few days, would have seen that he flew to China pretty much as soon as his Australian Grand Prix ended, and just been wandering around like the small towns outside of Shanghai, just yapping with locals who speak no English, no Portuguese, Spanish, French, any of the languages that this guy speaks, just sort of yapping with them and sort of saying the names of football players and going, very good. And then just sort of chatting with them, having a drink and just pottering about the gaff. And I love that. Never change.
There was a little clip, wasn't it, where he got into like a little like a tourist pleasure cruiser boat thing, and he tried to go under this like bamboo bridge, and it got stuck as well, which I thought was very very funny.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this thing about the Mercedes engine is I don't know whether or not it's surprising, but I don't know if there is anything within the sort of legal framework of the contracts between Mercedes and their customers. But somebody the a podcast I listened to earlier made the good point that if you were to buy, say, a phone or a computer or any sort of thing, you would expect a full set of instructions to come with it to be able to use it as properly as possible. Now, I know that this is a very different sort of industry because it's obviously competitive and there's high stakes and points and honor to a certain degree. And Total Wolf, after saying, "Oh no, 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 the engine isn't," we're not sandbagging. We're very happy to go through this compression ratio thing. Um, if this is the case, it doesn't look great for Mercedes, I must say. It's it smacks a bit of the old school F1 where they are um, playing the dirtiest of dirty tricks to their competitors. So something that
I
I wouldn't have I would have expected someone like Flav to have done.
I would love it if in next series of Drive Survive you have Toto in Christian Horner's place telling Zach Brown to just change his fucking car if he doesn't like it.
We can
I think
see
that
it.
would be
We can
a very
see the trailer.
a very Dark Knight reference of you either die here or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think Netflix should find a way to orchestrate that if it doesn't happen organically.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, there's something interesting about it because yeah, I think it also really depends on what's been written into those contracts, and those contracts are very rarely things that punters, journalists ever get to see. It's such a sort of dark art of Formula One, so it's something that can only be speculated on by sort of someone who knows someone whose brother drives a truck for McLaren who heard something being said in one of the loading bays outside the back of a workshop, and you sort of go, okay, so that's not really viable as a news source, I'm afraid. I'm going to have to sort of discredit that one. But given the level of unsuccess that a lot of the other Mercedes powered teams have had compared to the factory team, it's at least grounded in results, but might not actually be grounded in truth, if anything. But with the complete lack of news out of the way, Thiemo, have you got us some fun facts?
I do, but we're going to have to look back at Australia first for a couple of these, and one man in particular, and that man is Arvid Lindblad, because he became the fifth driver on the grid currently to score points on his F1 debut. Prior to him, you obviously had Hamilton, also in Australia back in 2007. Sainz, again in Australia, 2015. Behrman, you'll of course remember, Saudi Arabia 2024. And of course, Antonelli last year, also in Australia. But he also became the third youngest point scorer in Formula One history in the process. Verstappen and Antonelli are ahead of him on the list, while Stroll, amusingly, is just behind him, and Behrman rounds out the top five. So he's got a lot of good names around him that shows potential promise. Amusingly, Mario Andretti's quite separately got his first ever speeding ticket the other week in St. Petersburg on the weekend of his 86th birthday. Some policemen decided to pull him over, and I very much hope they asked him, "Who do you think you are, Mario Andretti?" And he will have just gone, "Yes." But when it comes to China, Michael Schumacher still holds the lap record there of 1 minute 32.238, which was set during the first ever Chinese Grand Prix back in 2004. Amusingly, though, Barrichello won on that occasion with Button and Raikkonen alongside him on the podium. So that's all I've really got for China, but at least eases us ever closer to Shanghai, which is, I believe, the purpose of this podcast, as we were sort of meant to be previewing it, but the news was not with us for that.
Yeah, it's some interesting facts spun out of certainly last weekend. I do like all the Arvid Lindbergh stuff. I think he's a really interesting character to carry forwards. And yeah, Shanghai being still unbroken since Schumacher came round here back in the old screaming sort of F1 car days is an interesting reminder because the track hasn't
They
changed.
say if you listen close enough, you can still hear the screams.
You can still hear it echo off the grandstands because the circuit layout hasn't changed, has it, since?
Nope,
So functionally, we can say we've simply made the cars worse every year since. I mean,
it's evolving, but backwards.
ignoring wet races and wet qualifyings, which obviously will have impacted it somewhere along the line, Shanghai does sometimes get impacted by weather conditions. It is springtime in the Northern
Or
Hemisphere,
the grass just setting itself on fire.
all that, which does seemingly somehow happen a lot. Obviously,
Happens,
this year's car, I was about to say this
happens
year's
more often than not. which is
I was about,
curious.
yeah, I was about to say this year's cars don't ride quite so low, but they were sparking a hell of a lot through the Australian Grand Prix. So maybe they'll set fire to Shanghai once more. We'll see how it goes. With some fun facts out of the way, it's time to lay down some predictions for the second Grand Prix of the season. Obviously, Thiemo does not believe in the idea of sprint races, so we do not predict anything regarding those. However, we have pole position to predict. Thiemo, could I have your position for pole position, please?
Charles Leclerc.
It's a solid choice. I like it. I don't have any questions for that. No follow-ups. Henry, yours.
Whenever we do these sorts of predictions, I do usually go down the sort of sycophantic route, and I'll say, "Oh, it's going to be Ollie or Ocon," or let's say K-Mag comes back and sets pole position. But I'm going to try and keep it slightly more realistic, unfortunately, this time, and I'm going to go with Kimi and Tonelli.
Pretty
I will
solid choice.
love it if Behrman or Ocon get pole this weekend.
Oh my God, I would just have, can you
Just to
imagine the
rob him of a
scene?
point.
I would feel like such conflicting emotions at that point. Like, oh my God, yes, I got. But I got the prediction wrong on this one podcast that I did.
We could Photoshop your face onto the maximum damage meme.
Yeah, he's not won the point, but at what great cost.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, Kimi Antonelli again. No further questions. The Mercedes is looking good. Antonelli's form is looking strong, and he's proven that even if he bins it in FP3, he can get it on at least the front row of the grid. So a lot to look forward to from him. For me, I'm going to say George Russell goes back to back with his poles. Because I think every weekend, if he keeps doing it, the pressure increases. This will be harder and harder for him to achieve, which is quite the challenge. Meanwhile, when it comes to the podium position predictions, Timo, who do you see standing atop the rostrum after the Grand Prix in Shanghai?
I'm going to try this again. Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri. Didn't happen last week. I'm going to try it again this week. And because I don't think we're going racing in the Middle East, and I don't think we're getting races replacing that, I will try this again for Japan if it doesn't happen this weekend. And then I'll have about 8 weeks to rethink everything. But until then, Hamilton, Leclerc, Piastri.
That's yeah, sensible options. Henry, are you going for something a little different?
I'm going for something a little different. I even despite a pole position, I have a sneaking suspicion that something might go wrong for Mercedes, which might upset the apple cart a little bit. So I'm going to throw in George to win it, with Charles coming in a very close second, with Lewis finally getting that official Grand Prix podium for Ferrari.
It would be fitting if it happened in China
Yeah, I
for
mean, exactly.
multiple reasons.
Yeah, for so many reasons. Lewis's history with China, his sprint win last year. I think if there was a bit of a redemption arc for him for 2026 with Ferrari, um, I have a feeling that it's going to be for this race in particular.
A lot to look forward to in that instance. I'm going to ramp up the pressure on George Russell by predicting him for a win, but I think that Charles will have learned a lot in the intermediate week to be closer to him on the podium. And I think Lewis will have his wits about him as well to also
Love how you just explained Henry's points just slightly differently to justify your own choices.
Wait, hang on, is
It's the exact same.
you can tell that
Imitation,
you can tell that my
imitation
brain is
is the finest form of flattery.
you can tell that my brain is absolutely fried because I wrote that out going, this is going to be a unique choice. And then gone, it's exactly what he's put.
You know what it is, Henry? Every masterpiece has its cheap imitation.
Exactly, exactly.
But I wrote out their full names on the Word document, so yeah.
Oh
Um,
well, look.
not being all colloquial with them. That could be any George in Formula One. Um, okay, strong set of podium predictions there. Timo really needs these to count because he's currently still on 0 points, as I really ought to add.
You're already
Fastest
on one.
Oh,
more
burn.
than you're on. Meanwhile, when it comes to fastest lap, who's circulating Shanghai the quickest? Timo.
Well, obviously, George Russell.
Yeah, reasonable. Henry?
I'm gonna back Ocon. I'm gonna put Esti as fastest lap.
About time you put a Haas driver in these. You've
Yeah,
not supported them at all in this episode,
well,
aside from
he
Kaylee.
got P5 last year. I mean, that was because of a double DSQ. But I've got high hopes Rock on. He had a not the best time out last time, and his quote of it feels like the cars are different. I've got a different car to Behrman. I think there's going to be some sort of uh,
Not to be pedantic, but I'd hope so, because otherwise they're driving the same car and two people aren't
well,
going to fit in that
how would
cockpit.
that work? Who does the pedals? Who does the steering? Who's good? Who gets to press the buttons on the wheel?
What's the
Yeah,
seating arrangement? Is it
top and
like the
tail.
old Top Gear episodes where you've got one F1 car on
Oh,
and the
yeah,
other
it
one
could be.
upside down on top of it?
Yeah,
Is it like
I think maybe top and tail, the ones like on their back and they're pressing the pedals with their hands. I think.
or is it like the Lego cars where you sort of sit in the lap of your teammate and one sort of navigates one and one's blindfolded, so you have to say sort of left, right, forwards, backwards, and that way it's sort of a team effort. I'm going the opposite side of the Haas garage though. I think they're going to have a fairly quick outfit this weekend. And I think though Behrman's got the form that should really carry him through. And yeah, fastest lap for Ollie Behrman for me, please. Meanwhile, when it comes to wild predictions, Thiemo, you're going to give it another shot.
I succeeded last week. I don't care what you say, but I'm going to give it another shot again this week. At least one Aston Martin makes it to the end of the Grand Prix.
Maybe you'll get it this weekend. Maybe you will.
Got a last weekend too.
I'll be
Last
checking that
weekend too.
FIA paperwork to see if it's another DSQ marked down for Aston Martin. But
I'll be cutting out some letters from the FIA official paper and send them to you with a very choice worded message on the front and the back of it if you're not careful.
go for it. Meanwhile, Henry, are you going to surprise us with your wild prediction?
No, I'm going to have double points. Like again, like I explained last um
Is that
for
bold
Ocon.
enough though?
I
Because
I don't know if
Okay,
I
all right.
because Ocon
I'll
got
go one better.
close.
I'll go one better, Timo. I'll go Haas triple points.
okay.
No, no, you're being silly now. I was gonna say you could instead of just saying double because that means they're both in the top 10. How far into the top 10 are you placing them? Maybe you want to be bold in that regard. Maybe you want to
Oh,
include
all right.
Kaylee in that and
Oh
say
no,
she
that's
gets
a
on the
good shout.
podium in
All
her
right.
F1 Academy debut.
Okay,
Who
I'm
knows?
putting
You've
this
got
in.
options.
I'm writing this down. I'm going to put both Haas in the top six.
Acceptable. Thank you.
Okay.
Double points.
Acceptable.
So
You're
silly.
my liege.
That's admissible to the defense. Um, my wild prediction.
You've seen my criticism of him. You saw my criticism of you last week. Don't
Go on,
cock it up.
Timo. Yeah, come on. Like, get into him. Not like that.
Thinking time. I'm going to insert the countdown noise here while I'm trying to think. What should I put as my wild prediction? I think I know what I'm going to put down as my wild prediction. I'm going to go for.
Says not knowing. You know we can't hear what you're typing, so you're going to have to tell us.
Yeah, I will, but it's fun editing like a nice, fun, clicky keyboard noise here.
Listen to
Oh,
how he then doesn't do that, Henry. It's
I,
just silence.
I have a very quiet keyboard. I can't edit it in live. That's not how editing works. I don't have like a
I
little.
meant playback later because you just don't edit it.
I do. You obviously don't listen back to the episodes.
There's, I don't think you listen back to it and edit it, but there we go. What is your world prediction?
Alpine, Cadillac, and Aston Martin all score points.
Acceptable.
Yeah,
That is bold.
that is bold considering two of those
I
teams
will
just won.
caveat that with points on their licenses don't count.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, not in the Alex Dunn sense. They have to score points towards their drivers and constructors standing. Yeah,
that is bold, italics, underlined, and center based.
yeah.
That's all of them.
Only a
Oh, and
third.
Comic Sans.
Yeah, a third of those teams scored points last weekend. Have the other two made the effort to actually improve the car coming into this weekend? Who knows?
You don't necessarily need to improve the car to score points. Might just
No,
go
they just
badly
need
for many,
Correct.
many other
yeah,
people.
yeah. They only need six other cars to not finish functionally, possibly a bit more. But anyway, it's interesting times.
Maths like that, you could work at Aston Martin in their wind tunnel.
Their wind tunnel doesn't work, so I very much could, and they wouldn't notice the difference. That's the funny part here. But anyway, uh, the only wind tunnel they have is literally Adrian Newey in a straw, just sort of going, "Is that working?" I don't know. But anyway, that's It's not necessarily all we've got time for. It's just all we've got for the Shanghai Grand Prix preview. It's been a remarkably quick one. Um, Henry, in the meantime, if the people want more content from the Haas Chap, where can they find Haas-based content?
You can find all relevant Haas-based content from the Haas Chap at the just search the Haas Chap into Instagram or TikTok and on Threads as well. Um, I go live on TikTok from time to time, making that a little bit more of a thing when I do bit of like a Q&A session. There's plenty of exciting stuff coming up for me this year, so make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok for all of those shenanigans.
Excellent. And Thiemo, in the meantime, if people want more from you,
Sweet on the Curbs IndyCar for a review of Phoenix ahead of the next round in Arlington, and I've also got a couple of pieces up on its race week, one of which is an F1 Academy 2026 driver guide with a small asterisk with obviously that third primer driver not yet being added, as well as a bite-sized look telling you all you need to know about the Shanghai International Circuit on the Curbs on Instagram for everything else.
lovely stuff. And if you want more from me, you can, of course, pick up the latest issue of Classic Car Weekly, which has plenty of fun content in it there. And we're starting to build up towards the Practical Classics Classic Car Restoration Show at the NEC. I'll be there for the first 2 days of the show, so bobbing around, have a chat with me, come find me, say hello. Equally, we've got the Classic Car Weekly podcast, and you can find me just on the internet as at Jesse on Cars on most social media platforms. So come look at my stuff in the nicest
Could have
possible
phrased
sense.
that better.
Yeah, I could have phrased that a lot better, but again, I've had a very mentally fatiguing day. We'll be back after hopefully a restful weekend, an interesting Chinese Grand Prix, the first round of Formula One Academy, and Timo, remind me where IndyCar is coming from this weekend. Is it Arlington?
Texas.
Lovely stuff. So, plenty of motorsports to enjoy over the weekend. We'll be back with a review of all the action from Shanghai in a few short days.